Welcome, my name is Fabian Lenz, and in this section we're going to talk about how to create a Horizon conceptual design. When we talk about designing end-user computing solutions, it's really important to put the end-user experience in the center of all kind of design decisions. A lot of characteristics of a design, availability, scalability, manageability, security, recoverability need to be included into our design, how we create the solution. At the same time, we of course need to involve cost effectiveness into our solution. Over the years, we have figured out that those characteristics, including putting the end user in the middle of all of our design decisions, is a really important step in creating a proper design for the end user. It is important to create a certain methodology when we create designs, and we have seen that the differentiation in a conceptual design, logical design, and physical design has been proven as really the industry standard in building the best solution for IT services. What is the conceptual design? The conceptual design describes a system or the solution we are building from a business perspective. We include all kind of information we gathered during current state analysis, during business requirement engineering tasks, during application requirement analysis to create the solution from a business point of view. Once we have gathered all of those information, we have created something we call the conceptual design, we can move on and add technological design decisions and solutions into it. That's what we call the logical design. We talk about which components do we use, which design decisions do we make on a high level to figure out which components are interacting with each other. So the logical design gives us feedback about how the solution should look like in the end from a higher perspective. Based on the logical design, in the end we build the physical design. The physical design includes all of those certain configuration parameters like which IP address, which host name, which version of a certain solution, which configuration item are we building into the solution. And of course that is an iterative process we fulfill over a certain amount of time and create the proper solution, and we never forget to put the end user and the requirement of the end user in the middle of all our design decisions. So, the conceptual design takes the information from all the kind of stakeholders and interviews we gathered during the assessment phase, during the analysis phase. We gain requirements, we extract assumptions, we extract constraints, we talk about the goals of the solution we are building. At the same time, we need to integrate the business goals and all kind of business requirements into the solution as well. We need to figure out which entities, which persons, which organizations are already included in in those kind of project. How does this project affect those organizations, those stakeholders? We need to figure out what are the certain goals, requirements, constraints of all of those entities in our environment. And we need to figure out what kind of infrastructure requirements, dependencies we have for our solution. It is important for us to document the results of the conceptual design in form of a diagram, of tables, and also in form of a text that can be reviewed by the customer, that can be reviewed by the certain stakeholders we use during the interviews, so that we don't build a solution that does not really meet the requirement of the business. One example of such a conceptual design, how it might look like from a diagram perspective can be seen in the following. We have the physical layer underneath, which includes all kind of physical infrastructure capabilities like the servers, the network, the storage that we need in such an end-user computing solution. At the same time, if we talk about desktop virtualization, we have this virtualization layer that includes a hypervisor, that includes any kind of, again, storage, network characteristics that we need to add to the solution. For sure, the desktop resource layer needs to be included as well, since we talk about virtual desktops. In the desktop resource layer, we talk about what kind of desktops are we going to build? What is the business requiring for our solution? Will it be Linux desktops for certain use cases like computer-aided graphics that need 3D acceleration support? Do we have Windows-only desktops for our task workers? So even though we typically don't talk about any kind of certain technology, we need to know which use cases are behind those desktop characteristics that we put into the conceptual design. At the same time, besides the desktop, the application plays a very important role. So what kind of applications do we need to add into our solution? Will it be legacy-based application only that is installed into a virtual desktop? Will it be remote desktop hosted application? Will it be SaaS-based application, so software as a service cloud-based application? Do we have any kind of certain other criteria that we need to add to our applications? Even though we don't go into that much detail on a conceptual level, we need to capture those information and need to bring it into a kind of persistent format. The user access is also a very important part of the conceptual design. How does the user get access into the environment? How does the user get access to application? Is there any kind of self-service portal included? Is there any kind of location-based awareness principles required? Those are things that we need to capture, that we need to gather from the business units. And then we are able to finalize the conceptual design from a diagram perspective. For sure, all of those components need to be surrounded by capabilities that includes management or operations capabilities and security capabilities. So when we talk about end-user computing solutions, we need to include the operators, we need to include the security department as well into it. And when we talk about the conceptual design, it is important to talk about the stakeholders as well. The stakeholders are persons that are involved in the project, that deliver information, that deliver resources to it, that gives us the information that defines the requirements that we are dependent on. So it is really important right in the beginning to identify the right stakeholders, interview the right stakeholders, and extract all the relevant information and define certain dependencies for them. Who are the stakeholders? For example, that might be the project sponsor, who is kind of financially responsible for the project. We need, for sure, when we talk about a desktop virtualization project, we need information about the virtualization architects. We need information of the business decision makers. We need information of the core infrastructure team, network, storage, security, to make sure we don't interfere with existing business policies within the organization. Add the operations team to it, the application delivery and the packaging team that define the applications in the environment. That is really, really important. And for sure, since we always focus on the user, include the end users as early as possible into the conceptual design. And that is really the main focus. Add them to a user acceptance test, get feedback from them. Bring the feedback you get from them back into the design and create the proper solution. In the end, we get the requirements and we differentiate between the functional and non-functional requirements. We'll talk about that in a later section of this class. When we talk about the business objectives, we need to define them in a smart way, or to make it a little bit shorter in a way that the goals that the business defines are realistic, are specific, are measurable. So we need to ask the right questions during the conceptual design phase from the SMEs and stakeholders of the company. What are the company's business needs? Do multiple business units will add information to the design? How do the department boundaries affect the desktops in our data centers? How does the budget constraints the design? Those are all questions we need to ask. What is the project schedule? Do we have multiple phases that we need to reach? What skills are available in the organization? What skills are lacking to deliver, to operate the solution in the end? And are there any kind of other regulatory or security compliance policies that we need to know? That is really, really important. And for example, business objectives can be something like, we need to improve the control of our desktops, because we put a lot of resources into building solutions that are there to update desktops, to patch the desktops, to back up the desktops. That's a goal of the business in the end. We want to improve the security of the data. If we have a virtual desktop solution, we have the data always in the data center, not outside at the mobile device, not outside of the corporate boundaries. So that is that can improve the security of our solution. What can we do to ensure business continuity if a data center is failing, if there's some outage in a bigger area, if there's a disaster occurring? How can we maintain user isolation? How can we make sure that the user only has access to the data, to the critical sensitive information that he should have access to? How can we increase the user mobility? Also a very important point where we use desktop virtualization. How can we make sure that a user which has a child that became ill is able to work in still the common known environment? And for sure, maybe the green mandate is also something that we define as a business objective, because we want to decrease the CO2 outcome of our data center, and we want to increase the efficiency from the power consumption and climate level. And for sure, we always start with analyzing the current state of the environment. So we need to figure out what hardware is currently used, what applications are currently used, which products, which size of footprint do those applications take currently in the data center. Do we have any kind of graphic or 3D graphic characteristics or requirements in our environment? What kind of services do we deliver with our applications? At the same time, we need information about login times, about the boot time, about the profiles of our user. We need to figure out how the current resources are utilized to make a proper sizing in the end of the new environment. We need to figure out, do we have already hardware in place that we can use, or do we need to find the budget to get new hardware for our desktop virtualization solution? And for sure, it's really important to assess the environment using any kind of tools that gives us this information. For example, third-party tools like Systrack or Perfmon or any kind of other solution that is out there in the market. So once we've made the current state analysis, we need to figure out what the technical requirements are. And when we talk about gathering the technical requirements, it is really important to figure out those high-level requirements really in the first step of our design or of our system definition. Those technical requirements can touch areas like the virtualization infrastructure, like the networking and storage infrastructure, like security, like application integration, like access and authentication methods, and compliance and regulatory circumstances that we need to design to. So we figure out those technical requirements, we track them down in any kind of table format, and we look afterwards if we meet all of those requirements we have defined in this phase of the project. There will be further sections where we talk more about how to figure out the requirements and how to track them down properly.